YouTube, what is up? James, MTG Biggie here. I know it's been a while, but it's a new year and I felt the need to make a video. And I'm going to talk about the best part of Magic the Gathering, at least to me, and that's Legacy. My favorite constructed format, the best way to play Magic if you're kind of a purist of the game and you want interactive and fun gameplay and you want to play with both old and new cards. If you've been playing the game for some time, or even if you're a newcomer, Legacy is a ton of fun. And recently on MTG Goldfish, Dyer, who does a weekly Legacy roundup sort of thing, where he does an article every week talking about the format and changes in the format and decks in the format and how healthy the format is and stuff. He did a Legacy roundtable discussion with a bunch of the more well-known community members and players. And what I thought I would do is just take his questions from that roundtable and just answer them myself. If you don't know, I've been playing Legacy more or less since I got back into Magic around 2014. Right around Cons of Tarkir, I started playing Magic again. Not long after that, I took interest in Legacy. I've been playing Death and Taxes as my main deck all the way up until this past year, and then I've pivoted and sort of changed routes and changed decks in the format. And I've also have played various other decks periodically here and there, and I've become pretty familiar with the format, and I've been a big ambassador of it, which I'll go into later on as well. So we'll start with these questions. First and foremost, question number one is, what are your current thoughts on the Legacy format? Are you having fun? Is the format healthy? I'll preface this with saying that I play all of my Legacy in paper in real life. I have a local game store, Golden Fang Games, in Hudson, Florida, which is the greater Tampa Bay area, that when they opened their store, being good friends of mine, I suggested they try to run Legacy events and at least give it a shot, and they have, and it's been going very well, which I'll talk more about that later as well. So as far as the current format, my experience is the local meta I have with paper. I'm not playing Magic Online anymore. I haven't really touched Magic Online in some time. So that being said, I don't have the same troubles that a lot of the Magic Online players have, where it's constantly Delver. For the last year or so, Delver's been the top deck, and it has been getting to a point where it's getting old for a lot of players. I don't have that problem so much because there's not a ton of Delver players in the area. I think everybody kind of has agreed that Delver is not everybody's cup of tea to pilot, and also that it is kind of the same thing over and over again, and people just kind of steer away from Delver, at least locally here. So for me, I love the format. I think the format is in a very good spot right now. I'm having a ton of fun with it, although that there are new things in the format. The White Initiative deck has just come out of nowhere. Minx and Boo came out of nowhere and are having a major effect on the format, but it's still new and it's still fun, and nothing right now is breaking the format in a way that I feel is untenable or not able to be adjusted around. And so right now I think the format is interesting. It may not be the most healthy overall on a grand scheme of things, as far as Delver being the best deck, the Initiative deck being problematic early on, but it's still fun, and it's still, I think, healthy enough to not warrant any real action. If they wanted to ban a card from Delver like Expressive Iteration or Murktide, I wouldn't be upset, but I don't think they need to. I don't mind when Delver is the best deck in the format. I would rather it be Delver than a 4-color good stuff pile with perfect mana and no consequences. So that's where I stand on that question. 2, what changes would I make to the current format? Bans, unbans, and why? I don't know that I would ban anything. Like I said, Murktide or Expressive are cards that are interesting that could be banned, and I don't think I would mind, but I'm not clamoring for any bans. I think right now the format is in an interesting spot. The initiative cards and the initiative decks are making the format kind of warp around them. They're forcing people to play decks that either go underneath them or go over the top of them. And I think it's an interesting sort of dynamic in a meta where these initiative decks came out in the first couple weeks. They were out, they were dominating, and people didn't know how to react to them. And then after people got a feel of how they work and how they play, now the basic idea is if you want to defeat these very aggressive initiative decks that have kind of prison elements to them too, you try to go underneath them with something that wins fast and combo. So decks like Elves and like Painter Servant and Cephalid Breakfast are all combo decks that kind of get underneath, get in before the initiative decks have an opportunity to set up, and tend to be very good against them. And then if those decks that beat the initiative deck get too out of hand, then there will be some bigger control decks again that start to kind of prey on those decks. So it's going to be like the rock, paper, scissors of like initiative, combo, control, and depending on what weekend it is or what tournament it is, one's going to come out on top of that, and then the others will adjust accordingly. As far as unbans go, I don't know that I care to unban anything. There are certainly some older cards that have been banned for a long time and that were banned at a time when Legacy wasn't at the power level that it's at now. So maybe you could look at some of those cards, but I don't think there's any specifically. Like Earthcraft is the one that I know a lot of people are kind of caping for and unbanned for, but it's not necessary. I don't think it changes anything. I don't think it like makes the format better or worse. Maybe something like Survival of the Fittest, but again, that card, like at the time it was banned for good reason, but now there's a lot of stuff that abuses that card, even more so than when it was banned. But I don't think you need to mess with anything. I think the format's okay. Pay attention to the white initiative decks, pay attention to Delver further, but leave the format alone for now. My thoughts on initiative, I kind of just went over. That's question number 3. As a mechanic, is it good or bad for Legacy? Unclear. I think we need more time with it. I don't think it's necessarily a great thing for Legacy that there's this mechanic that generates so much value for such a little cost. Like you cast a 3-drop creature that has stats on it, that has power and toughness, and does some other stuff in some cases. And then you get this just value engine that if other decks are unprepared to fight or that can't fight on that angle, just get dumpstered by it, and it's very difficult to fight against. I don't think that's necessarily good for the format. But again, I like to give it more time to let the format adjust around it some more and figure it out. And there may be a time where like this deck, which was so insanely powerful in the beginning, just falls back into being just a deck in the format that exists. We've had decks come up before that were insanely powerful combo decks, and cards come up before that like took over the meta for a brief time and then just kind of slid back into the background and became tier 2 and 3 decks, or even tier 1 decks that people now have to work around. Like when Kappa Cannoneer first came out, 8-cast was already an incredibly good deck. That card is insanely powerful, and it made the deck quite a bit better, but it took over a little bit and then kind of faded back. People were a little panicked, like, how do you deal with this thing? I still hate the card, but it's not like it's taking over the entire meta and it's completely unbeatable. You just have to know how to fight against it. So I don't know that it's good for the format, but I don't necessarily think it's bad for the format. I will say that it is getting a little nuts with these cards that were built for a 4-player format to be kind of impacting a 1v1 format in the way that they are. It's happening a little bit too often, and I would rather it not be as much and as often. Every now and then, if something sneaks through, like a True Name Nemesis or something, I'm good with that. But when it's multiple cards a year, Cap Cannoneer, Minx and Boo, the initiative cards, it's getting to be a little bit much. So maybe when they are designing things for Commander, if they have some sort of way to make them work in the function that they're supposed to, but not affect 1v1 formats as much as they do, that would be something that I would be a fan of. And then 4, on a scale of 1 to go for the eyes, how hard do you fling boo at your enemies? I think this is just speaking on Minx and Boo in general in the format. I probably dirtle as hard as I can and try to draw all the cards with Minx and Boo if I'm playing the 4-color Minx and Boo control deck. Honestly, I think that card is appropriately powered for Legacy, and there are enough things that fight against Minx and Boo that make it a fair card for the format. It's very good. If it goes unchecked, it will win games. But things like Lightning Bolt take it down, Caracas takes it down, and basically nerfs the entire card. So there are ways around it. You could fight it on the stack with counter magic. And if you have a go wide sort of creature plan, you can attack it down. So it's not unbeatable. You just have to be prepared for it. You can't be caught sleeping on it. So yeah, I draw all the cards with Minx and Boo if I'm playing it. I get in for my 4, and then the next turn I'm drawing 4 and starting the process over again. And then the last final question here is, do you have any cool spice for the current format? Any sweet tips for players new to Legacy? My sweet spice or cool spice or whatever is I've pivoted to a deck that's faster now that beats Initiative. I was playing blue, white, red Shark still for a while, and that deck was very good for a moment, and I think it had its moment, and I think it's now no longer as viable as it was. And then I pivoted to a Jeskai control build that was strictly a control deck, and I've played various forms of that deck, and I still think it's a little too reactive for the format, and I think it doesn't have the ability to close games quickly before these decks like Initiative get set up. So I pivoted, and I am now playing around with Cephalid Breakfast as my deck of choice. I've been enjoying learning the deck. It has an interesting learning curve, and it has to be piloted in such a manner that you pick and choose the opportune times to go for the combo, and you pick and choose operative times to not go for it and to sit back and to develop the game further. And I think it's really, really interesting. And I think it is, as far as combo decks go, incredibly interactive. And it plays a little bit like a control deck that just has an I win combo, almost like a Splinter Twin sort of thing, like A plus B equals win sort of combo. And I enjoy that sort of gameplay. If I'm playing a combo deck, I want it to be not a full all-in dedicated, the only thing you can do is combo. I like it to be in the shell of an interactive control deck where I get some gameplay that sort of satisfies me in that way. And sweet tips for players new to Legacy. If you are new to Legacy, find a group of players that allow playing with proxies and encourage playing with proxies. Proxies are the best thing to happen to Legacy in a long time as far as cultivating a community and a play group goes and firing tournaments goes. The game store that I play with has been allowing playtest cards, they have to use the term playtest cards, in unsanctioned Legacy events for the last year. And just 10 proxies, basically. And it's gotten so much interest that it's bringing people that played Legacy previously out of the woodwork, people who have turned away from the format or sold out of the format previously. It's bringing them back to Legacy, and it's getting interest from modern players, from EDH players, from players that haven't played Legacy before, because they can build a deck affordably when you allow people to just play with proxies. I would rather have people play with cards that they don't own than not play the format at all and not be able to fire tournaments. When we first started playing Wednesday Legacy at my game store, they started a little slow, and we fired a couple times in a row. We would get 7 or 8 people just barely fire a tournament and play 3 rounds, and it was fun. And we just stuck with it and kept encouraging new players to get into the format, and modern and commander players and other players that we knew, just to build legacy decks. The store that I play at built a couple legacy decks for the shop that they lend out to players. I have multiple decks where any given week I could show up with my deck and then have another deck for somebody else to try out. That is how you build a healthy community. That is how you play a format that people have this preconceived notion is out of reach or is priced them out of playing it. Just use proxies. Decks even like Blue-Red Delver, if you're allowing 10 proxies in a tournament, you get your 4 Volcanic Islands, your 4 Force of Wills, and 2 of your 4 Wastelands. That's 10 proxies. The rest of that deck is cheap. It's, commons and uncommons with Brainstorms, Ponders, Delvers, Days. It's not that much money. And if you have, like, a modern Murktide build, you can port all the creatures from that into your Legacy build and just proxy the expensive lands and Force of Wills, and there you go. Don't be afraid to play with proxies. Don't be afraid to play against people with proxies if you own your deck. Because at the end of the day, it's the way to do it and the way to cultivate a community. We started out barely firing with 8 people every other Wednesday to eventually now we're pushing 20 people regularly and getting close to the 20 people mark every single week on a Wednesday night, where people have work the next morning and stuff, because people just love the format so much that if there's an opportunity to play it, people will show up. You just have to give people the opportunity and keep it consistent and encourage people and be cool with new people in your community and help where you can. Lend cards out, lend decks out, encourage proxies, and that's how you build a community. And that's my tips for players in the community. Outside of that, just take in content. There's a lot of great podcasts. There's a lot of great YouTube content on Legacy, much better than my own. And, if you're interested in it, just talk about Legacy with other players that you know and try it out yourself. But those are the 5 questions I thought that I would answer from Joe Dyer's roundtable from MTG Goldfish. And that being said, Legacy is the only format right now, Magic, I have any real interest in. I'm kind of done with Modern. I don't want to play Arena, so I don't play Standard. Pioneer, I have a marginal amount of interest in, but it is hard to make it out to the nights that play Pioneer around me. So I will continue playing more Legacy. I will continue cultivating this community, and I will do everything I can to help players get into it. So if you have any questions at all about Legacy, if you're in Florida, in the Tampa area, anywhere nearby, please get a hold of me. If you have any questions at all or want to come out and play Legacy at Golden Fang Games, I will gladly help you out any way I can. And I look forward to building this community even larger. We just had a tournament where the winner took home a Tundra at Golden Fang, where we had 29 players show up to play for a Tundra. So that's the sort of things that we're building toward, doing larger, bigger scale tournaments with better prizes and more players. And if you're into that sort of thing, then you can do this too, wherever you are. Just definitely keep at it. And like I said, reach out if you need anything. That's all I've got. I will talk to you again soon.